Hey, how's it going? So this has been bugging me for a little bit now, and that has to do with the Intellivision Amico and the unboxing that they did. And I'm not putting that in scare quotes to be like disingenuous or whatever, because that was in the email. They put unboxing in quotation marks, and I think that was um, not just flippant. I think that was something that they thought about when they did it, just so they could have an excuse out when things happen. But now a lot of other YouTubers have been covering the Amico story, and they've been dwelling on this unboxing thing for quite some time. And I kind of want to give my 2 cents in. And for those of you who don't know, because my channel has been largely political, and I kind of want to not move away from it, but kind of venture into other topics as well. And we kind of did like a whole little deep dive on the Intellivision Miko story thus far on the latest episode of my podcast, The Lulberts. And so they just did an unboxing, which is weird because I want to say like a few hours before they released the video of the unboxing, I left a comment on Smash JT, who is a YouTuber who has been very much in favor of the Intellivision Amico up until recently, until he's become very critical of it. He was talking about how there was this rumor that GameStop had a bunch of stock of Intellivision Amicos, and he was casting doubt on it, that was true. And obviously it's not true. And I said, this is a company that every time that they make even the smallest amount of progress, we got new plastic. We got the plastic shell done. We have a prototype of a controller. Even like, oh look, we have physical games, and sure, we'll sell them now. Every step of the way, they go and they have this new video that they upload, and they go into deep detail about how this is revolutionizing and everything. And it usually is like the most benign thing. And I said, look, if that was true, to add to your thing, if this is true, then Intellivision would definitely show an unboxing. And they would show the box, and they would be all head over heels about how important this box is. And they didn't do it. So obviously this is not true. And a couple hours later, that video came up. So this is not an unboxing video, and it's very apparent when in the email that they sent out that this was an unboxing, quote unquote. This is not so much to show that they're making progress, and this is something that they're almost ready. This was very much to show like, hey, we made a very small step, and we created the box, and now we actually have a working prototype of the box, and this is what the box is. It's not a complete what it's like to open up the box, because we don't even have a retail unit. From my understanding, there is not a retail unit in existence. Even at Amico headquarters, there's not a retail unit in existence. These are development kits. These are prototypes that they have. And this prototype or this development kit is being sent out to Europe. And there was a lot of weird things that were wrong with it. There was no film to cover the shiny plastics that were over the controller. There was nothing securing the controllers down. There was no packaging material to make sure that it was safe during shipping. It was just kind of just thrown in there. And there was a large section of the box which it was very apparent that this was supposed to be the documentation for safety and that sort of thing that usually comes with all consoles. And the box was kind of beat up, and there's a whole bunch of other things, and there's a bunch of YouTubers that were talking about this stuff and going through and picking apart this video, and rightfully so, because it needed to be picked apart. And because they Intellivision has just had this long history of just putting out like haphazard things, not really thinking about things too much, and then just releasing the video and not realizing that they're, shooting their own foot in the process. And this is just another case of it, because they just have no foresight about the things that they do. They're just completely just out to lunch when it comes to kind of PR stuff, which is, I guess, unfortunate, whatever. I really do hope, by the way, I really do hope this system eventually does come out. And I hope that all the people who paid money to get their pre-orders don't get screwed over, in bankruptcy. Because if the company goes into bankruptcy, they're not under any obligation to pay back anybody. I think it's pretty clear that the investors have been asked out, and that was pretty much clear since day one, considering that consoles don't usually make money. And it's very rare when they do. It's a very rare thing. In fact, Microsoft has been doing this for 20 years now. They just celebrated their 20th anniversary last year in November, and to this day they have not turned a profit. They have not had a single profitable console to date. The original Xbox was a giant money suck, because the console cost them like almost $500, and they were selling them at, initially they were selling them at $300. Sorry for the fire truck. They were selling them for like $300, and then they ended up reducing the cost to $200, but it cost them like $400 because they were still new to the game, and they didn't really realize that they were supposed to work out deals with hardware manufacturers to get lower costs. And so they were just they were just hemorrhaging money the whole time. The Xbox 360, which did very well, unfortunately had this big problem called the Red Ring of Death that cost them a couple $1 billion to correct. The Xbox One was a complete disaster. And I'm hopeful that the Series X will finally net them some money. But I think that they're kind of moving away from just, being like a console, the Xbox being a console, to being like a brand of just video game stuff. So it's not just Xbox the console. Now it's xCloud, it's Game Pass, it's the Microsoft Game Store on PC and Xbox, and then the console, and all the kind of peripherals and stuff all that stuff, because they want to kind of get more into just having Xbox as just being a brand. That's why there's no Xbox exclusives, insofar as those games also being on PC, which I think is a good move, and I hope, I wish it the best, and most of all because I have a Series X. But like, this console doesn't make any sense. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And the more that Intellivision makes new stuff, or makes new content to show how far along in the process they are, the more it just sings home to me that this is like a completely pointless thing. It's completely pointless. And when it first was announced, I was kind of like, I was optimistic. Like, I ended up putting in a pre-order. I got my refund, obviously. I'm not dumb. But I got my pre-order in as soon as they announced it. But and it wasn't because I liked Tommy. I've always thought that Tommy was kind of off-putting. I thought he was a good guy, but rather off-putting. Thought the secret stuff was kind of weird. But I was just like, hey, man, whatever. Maybe if it gives him the motivation to do it, fine. You can believe in whatever woo you want. It's fine with me. But there was a couple things that were said initially that I thought were good ideas. Like, maybe we do need a new Wii, something for the casuals to play. Maybe, having another version of Nintendo Switch, or excuse me, Wii Sports or Wii Sports Resorts, because those games are fun and I enjoy them. And I actually went through the hassle of finding a Wii and modding it in order to get that stuff done. Originally not just to play that. I was wanting a GameCube because I wanted to get all of the 6th generation stuff and mod them. But the more I started messing with the Wii to get it to be more to be a GameCube replacement, I ended up just liking the Wii catalog more than I did the GameCube. And I'm sorry, not sorry. There's a lot of great GameCube games, don't get me wrong, but I really enjoy a lot of the Wii stuff more. But the thing is, it's like most of the people who were really interested in the Wii have moved on, and they're playing things like Candy Crush. They're playing Angry Birds. They're playing, World of Tanks or whatever the fuck it's called. They're playing mobile games, and all those mobile games are free. Peggle, Extreme. They're playing games that are essentially free, and those people aren't exactly paying money to play those games. They're sitting through the ads. They're getting through it. Maybe they'll throw in $1 here just to sit down and play it and not have to worry about ads. Excuse me. But there's a handful of people who subsidize the cost of maintaining those, who just spend all kinds of money. They're just lunatics, and they just dump a whole bunch of money into free-to-play games, or pay-to-win games. And that's kind of like where the casual market is now. The kind of people who are becoming grandparents now, the types of people who when you hand them this is true. Like, a lot of people gave Tommy crap about, handing an older person a modern controller and them getting freaked out. That's a real thing. That is a real thing. And I've given my, before she passed away, I ended up wanted to play a couple of games with my grandmother, who actually got me introduced into video gaming through the Intellivision, no less. And it's somewhere there's a picture of me sitting in her lap with an Intellivision controller, and she's showing me how to play as a really young baby. I wanted to show her. She immediately looked at the controller and was just like, this is too complicated. I want nothing to do with it. But she passed away, and that kind of generation of people who didn't grow up with video games or weren't interested in video games, those people are slowly passing away. They're no longer with us. And the type of people who are becoming grandparents now are the type of people who have grown up with video games, be it through the arcade, be it through the Intellivision, be it through, the Atari. Like, there was a lot of older people in the 70s who were playing these games. It wasn't until, the 80s that stereotype was true, that, the people who played video games were very young children. And that was more of a really good marketing strategy after the video game crash in the 80s. So the idea that, that people are afraid, like my mom actually is afraid of modern controllers, and when she got her Switch, I had to kind of sit her down and be like, don't worry, this is nothing too complex. You're just going to play a couple of these very simple games. Here's the the two sections of the controllers you need to worry about. Don't worry about the rest. But even when I sat her down to play like Mario Odyssey, she was still kind of like, oh, I have to use 2 joysticks. This is too complicated. She ended up picking it up, but after she beat the first little boss, she was like, I'm done. This is too much for me. I just want to go back to playing Dr. Mario and those sorts of games. But my mom's an outlier, because even she grew up with Pong and the Intellivision and the Atari 2600. So she grew up with all that stuff. She's familiar with video games, and her generation is also very kind of in tune to video games. And sure, there's a very small handful of people who are still scared of that controller, but the people who are scared of those controllers, who bought a Wii to play Wii bowling, those people are slowly passing away, and they're no longer with us. They're just not. So we have a console for people who are dead, that are trying to make it easy for people who are dead to pick up this console and play. Now, that's not to say that you could appease casual gamers with games in a console. It's entirely possible you could do that. And Nintendo does a very good job on doing that. Like, that's pretty much their bread and butter, is that there is still a lot of casual people who go, I only play mobile games, but this new Switch thing looks kind of fun, because there's a couple of games that look really fun to them, especially like something like Animal Crossing. But I really don't see the point in it now, because since this launch, since it was announced, rather, because it hasn't launched, and it probably never will. Since this launched, the Nintendo Switch has come out with two important titles that kind of negate even needing this console to exist. One of which was Clubhouse Games, which has a lot of the things that you are seeing in the kind of the more casual kind of focused stuff in the Amico game lineup, like pool, spades, not only pool and spades, but it's got like a whole bunch of different board games and stuff, and you can link up other Switches, including like, the little tiny, the Switch Lite, and you can use that to have your own cards, so no one can see your hand. And sure, that's probably a little bit more expensive, but I think if people are really kind of getting into that kind of thing, they're going to end up putting out for that. But even still, it's like people are, that's not really exactly a game that you want to, that's really not something that's really too interesting to most people, because most people are going to, if you tell the average person, like, hey, we got this new console and you can play spades and poker with it, it's like, well, I have a deck of cards, and that's $5, at most. Even for a nice deck of cards, you can pay, about $13 for like a Theory 11 or a Illusionist deck of cards or something like that. But $3 at the grocery store, you can get yourself a pack of bicycle cards, and I can play spades. I don't need this console to do that. Now, it is kind of neat to have like a collection of 51 different games, one of which is spades and one of which is poker, that you can also do that with too. And that's where I think that's where the kind of the fun is, not so much the individual game. So why would I pay $3 for a spades game that I'm probably never going to play, where I can get a collection of things, spades is included, and I get that. And it also has bowling with motion controls, because believe it or not, the Nintendo Switch does have these little Joy-Con things, and they can kind of do something similar to motion controls that we saw on the Wii. Probably a little bit, the gyroscopes are definitely a lot better, but maybe not some of the precision stuff, because of the little sensor bar isn't there. But we're also getting Nintendo Switch Sports, which is a sequel to Wii Sports, the Wii Sports Resort, and it's coming with bowling, and it's coming with all those things that we got. So we have a lot of these kind of mobile games. Sure, it doesn't have cornhole, but from what I understand, there actually is a cornhole game for the Switch. I don't know if it uses motion controls, but you can buy a cornhole set for $100. Why do I need to get an Amico? And it just keeps going down the list. Like every single one of these kind of casual, very casual focused games that they keep announcing and showing off, like I just see less of a need for. And Nintendo is kind of realizing that, hey, there's a bunch of casuals that picked up our console since the release of Animal Crossing and Clubhouse Games. Maybe we should start a little focusing more on that, and that's why we're getting Wii Sports Resort. So there's a lot of that stuff, right? And when it comes to some of the other games, it's like, sure, Evel Knievel, I hear, is a really fun game, but that's been a mobile game, that came out in 2015. It's not available on the app stores anymore, but you can get it on Amazon App Store. So if you have an Amazon app thing, you can actually get it for $2. Is the multiplayer really worth the extra? What was it? $18? Probably not. The tank game. There's actually a tank game, a really good tank game that's on Clubhouse Games that looks a whole lot better than what we've seen clips of. There's a lot of retro games that are kind of in the style of things like Breakout and Pong on the Nintendo Switch. A lot of indie devs. In fact, you could probably get yourself a Switch. You can get those two titles and a couple of other $2, $3, $5 games, and probably end up spending a whole lot less than you would have if you just got the Amico and try to get all those games that you're looking forward for. Now, that's not to say that there's a lot of great games. Like, there's a couple of games on there that look good, but the couple of games that I think look good, from as far as I know, are shelved. Earthworm Jim has been shelved, which, by the way, Earthworm Jim should not be on the Amico. I'll probably get into that later. And from what we understand, the development has been mothballed. The Cloudy Mountain game and the Night Stalker game, from what I understand, has been shelved as well, so they can focus on the games that they know will work for the system, because there's been issues with hardware limitations in order to get those games running smoothly on the console. But even still, like, those aren't really, at least the last two, aren't system sellers. Like, no one's gonna, except for old fucks like me who grew up with the Intellivision, or probably no one's going to be interested in it. What's kind of interesting is that most of the people who are like really gung-ho about the Intellivision, the vast majority of them are older than me, because the generation that the Intellivision really kind of appealed to are older than me. I was born in '82, so I was born about the time of the video game crash. The only reason why I'm very familiar with it is because both of my grandparents had an Intellivision. So, which, by the way, the Intellivision is a great system. I love it. The controllers suck. I'm sorry, they really do. But even before I put my hands on a Nintendo controller, I never thought very fondly of the controller, which is, and it's weird that they're trying to claim that the reason why they developed the controller the way they did was because of market research. It's clearly not the case, because Tommy has a very big love affair with the nostalgia of the Intellivision, which I understand. I kind of do too. But like, if you go back and watch like the video game years, I think the 1979 one was the one where they talked about the Intellivision, even though the Intellivision technically came out in 1980. It was only released in a test market the year prior. That he's in there going like, oh yeah, I think the controller is genius. This was like while Keith Robinson was still alive, he was saying this stuff. So the idea that he picked this because of market research is not true. Like, it's very much in the style of the it's a slightly tweaked Intellivision controller, original Intellivision controller, to try to make it a little bit better. And that was one of the reasons why I pre-ordered it. Again, I got my refund, and I actually received my refund. I was like, as soon as that SEC document came out and I read through it, I was like, I'm out. This is not coming out. And I sent them a very stern letter saying that I want a refund. And because like I had not just lost faith that the company could produce something, it was becoming more and more apparent that this was turning from something that, a passion project from Tommy Tallarico into a straight on like scam. And it was mostly because of this concept that I've talked about many times on my channel, mostly regarding like political people, where someone will tell a lot, like mostly like ego people, very like ego-centric people, where they will tell a very small lie, and instead of doing the right thing of going like, yeah, okay, you caught me, I made a mistake, that's fine, they'll cover it with like another small lie, and then they'll cover it with another small lie, or they'll make a claim, they'll make like a big, like, they'll make a promise that they can't fulfill, and rather than being like, hey, I messed up and we're trying to make things right and try to get it done, they lie, and it just snowballs into like another lie covering another lie covering another lie until it gets out of hand, and that's where we're at now. So I ended up sending him like and I said, look, I want a refund, and if you don't give me a refund, I'm going to contact my credit card company and tell them this was a fraudulent payment. And the next business day, which I did it on a Friday night, I ended up getting it on the next Monday morning, which I'm hearing people are having issues getting refunds now. But yeah, like the original Intellivision controller sucked. I'm sorry, it does, and I love the Intellivision, and I still play Intellivision games, and I have an Ultimate Flashback that I play on, and I love it. But that controller is just god awful, and the reason why it's god awful, there's a couple of reasons. One, it's not very ergonomic. Even though these ones look a little bit more ergonomic, they're not that much more ergonomic to hold a controller like that. That's not something you can do for very long periods of time. Modern controllers are form fitted to fit your hand well, and it's a comfortable position. This is a comfortable position for people's hands. This is not. This is very much awkward. Even like this, right, where you're doing this, and then that's not very. That's a little bit better, but not great. And the disc is a terrible way of controlling video games, especially for a lot of the kind of arcadey games that were on the Intellivision, and a lot of the games that they're showing off here. There's a couple of games where I think that controller kind of were okay in. And the number pad on the thing doesn't work if you're using the disc as well, because of just limitations of the kind of weird membrane thing that they had going on in that thing. And the number pad is not very good. It's kind of squishy and weird. And the action buttons on the side were never really great. But the ones on the flashback actually were pretty good. Believe it or not. It's actually an improvement. A very small improvement. They're not good controllers. They're just not. But I thought the reason why I got it was because Tommy Tallarico, early on in 2018, and I can actually pull this up if someone's really interested, he was making a very big stink, and he spent like a good 20 minutes talking about how one of the pack-in titles for the Intellivision Amico would be a bundle of Intellivision games, like original Intellivision games, not remastered, just the original games with a JZ, what was it, JZ, I forget what that's called, but it's like the really good emulator for the Intellivision, the one that's on the Ultimate Flashback, not on the original Flashback, but the Ultimate Flashback. That's almost perfect. It's damn near perfect emulation. And he was going to put every single game. He was going we're going to put every single game I have that we have a license for, and the ones that we don't have a license for, we're going to try to work with companies like Disney to release games like the Tron games, and maybe if they want just we'll put it up for a couple bucks just to help them pay for the license or whatever. And I was like, that's cool. And because those controllers actually look like an improvement over the original television controllers, I thought that would be a really cool way to play a lot of those games, because that controller is, for all of its faults, an improvement over the original Intellivision controller. But that slowly stopped being a thing, and it was never officially discontinued or canceled, or he never said oh yeah, we can't do that or anything. It just became just vaporware, and we never heard anything about it. Even by the time I pre-ordered it, I was like, maybe it's still there, but I can't imagine why they wouldn't put that on there, or at least offer it, or at least talk about it again. But they never did, even before I pre-ordered it, and it just became more and more apparent that this wasn't going to be that. So that was one of the main reasons why I canceled my order. The big one, the one that finally was that's it, I'm done, was the final Kickstarter in the SEC document. I don't think this thing's coming out, and it's unfortunate. I want it to come out, and I'm not even sure if I'd buy it now, even if it did come out, even if it was the $250 price point that I was okay, but not happy about, but whatever. But it's just been a series of just broken promises. The television, original Intellivision games being on it, the price point, the developers being on it, the motion controls, just one thing after another. It's just a series of bullshit lies, and it's too much. And they've overpromised, underdelivered, and not only have they not, just in terms of the prototype, we're not even talking about how they're not even going to be shipping this console. And the thing that really ticks me off the most, the thing that's really been bugging me out of all of this is all this talk about the blockchain. And I think a lot of people just think blockchain is cool because Bitcoin, sure, NFTs are kind of scammy, but if they're using them correctly, then, there's NFTs have they could be useful, but the way they're playing out isn't useful, which is how I feel about Bitcoin in general. And cryptocurrency in general, rather. A lot of promise, but just being kind of squandered away on just easy money. But why do we need to have these on a blockchain? Like, why do we need to have NFTs as proof of ownership when you can just have a completely central system? This is not some sort of revolutionary technology that's going to stop the state or fight the man or anything. This is a console that's supposed to just kind of be fun, simple entertainment. And fun, simple entertainment is not blockchain. That's very complex and overly complicated technology to be using for something which you can just go, oh, you have an account? Okay, this account owns these games. Oh, you want to transfer those titles? Well, you can just transfer them. Just connect it to your controller. But I don't really see, I really don't see the point in it, rather than just kind of, it's very much how, I don't know if this is so much a thing anymore, but it was for a while, where people were trying to get people to finance, like trying to get venture capitalists to fund your project. And the best way to do it was to just tell them, oh, we have something on a blockchain, even though it's completely useless or maybe even counterproductive to put those things on a blockchain. But they just did it to throw it on a blockchain, to say it's on a blockchain. You like Bitcoin, right? Well, don't you want to get on the ground floor on this project because it's a blockchain too? It's completely pointless. Just have a server. And it's all just ridiculous. It really is ridiculous. But here's how I think, if I was Tommy, right? First thing I do is I throw that fucking secret book in the trash. But if I was Tommy, and I for somehow got the reins of Intellivision productions and created Intellivision Entertainment, and I wanted to do something with a brand, I think the best thing that I could do, the first thing that I would do, would release Intellivision Lives for Switch, for Xbox, for PlayStation, and for mobile. Actually, I think the best thing to do would just release it on mobile. That way, you'll get a lot of information from. I mean, I know there were some that were on there originally, but just include a package of all the Intellivision games that you have the license for. Put them in separate bundles so you can have Intellivision Pack 1, 2, like how they're doing for the Evercade. Put that out there, and that'll tell you like the demographic of people that are buying the games, how much their incomes are, because Google collects more data than they should. And they would have all that data to be like, okay, so who is our target demographic that we need to focus on? Look at the console market and be like, okay, we'll target those ones first, that have more of those demographics as consumer bases, and put collections out on those as well. And then use the money to do that, to be like, hey, you like these games? These games are great. Let's have a couple of reimagined ones. Let's do a Cloudy Mountain, with those neat graphics. Oh, you like that? Well, if that's successful, then you can go on and do more. Then you can use the money that you're collecting from these new games that you're creating, reimagine games, just like Atari is doing with the Recharged series, or Reloaded, or whatever the fuck they're calling them, to push more and and to save money and get an idea of what it's like as a company, because a lot of these people seem very unfamiliar with it, at least on board. Maybe the people working on the system seem, the ones that they're showing, a lot of them do have some experience with it. If they even work for the company, because now we know that things like Jay Allard wasn't true. If we can, if you can get some success with that, then you can move forward to be like, hey, maybe we should make a console. But I think their target with the Wii, or making the new Wii, is a bad move. I really do think it's a bad move in this day and age for reasons I've already stated. And I think the smart thing to do, especially since they have it seems as though that there's something there that they understand. Otherwise, they wouldn't have they wouldn't have offices in Utah. But to focus on, the deeply religious people who are too afraid to buy their kids a Switch, because there are dating games in there that are rated M. Be like, I want a console that I know that I can give my kids, and no matter what I buy for them is going to be family friendly and Christian. Appeal to Christian video game developers and try to get them to be on. I think that would probably be a way forward. I don't see how throwing the Intellivision brand on any of this stuff it makes any sense with that prospect too. But at least you can, if creating a new console was what you wanted to do, I think that might have been a more successful path. But then again, it would have been a very niche market. It's not going to, it's not going to dominate over the Switch or anything like that. I really don't see a reason for anybody else to enter the video game console industry anymore, to be completely honest. And this is not someone who's like, I am predominantly a PC gamer. And it's not coming from that. I'm trying to look at it really objectively. I mean, I do have a Series X. And a Switch, but so I'm not completely anti-console. I do like consoles. I prefer PC, but I don't see a reason. Because they've hit their market. Like Xbox is trying to appeal to the PC gamers. The people who want to play a lot of first-person shooters and stuff like that. That's their market. Sony has their kind of market. That's the core hardcore gamer, console gamer platform. Like if you're hardcore into console gaming, that's where you want to be. And then you have the more friendly, fun, safe for all intents and purposes, at least with their first party titles, family friendly stuff, which is the Nintendo brand. I really don't see a reason for any of those three companies to go away. And I really don't see a reason for any other one to come in. There's a reason why Nintendo has not pursued another Wii kind of formula, and that's because it's not successful in this day and age, because the casual gamers have moved to mobile. The older ones that were playing it just for like Wii bowling, just to have some sort of athletics, a lot of them have been passing away. And the ones that haven't passed away are not really mobile anymore, mobile enough to enjoy those sorts of titles anymore. So it's kind of a moot point. It really is kind of a moot point to enter the console space, unless you really want to kind of do a very niche type of thing, something like the Evercade or the Playdate or something like that, because or the analog or some emulation box. There's really kind of no reason for it anymore. As much as like my nostalgia for the Intellivision really did kind of blind me early on, I was never really like gung-ho about it. Even when the games started showing off, I was like, these look terrible, but it'd be great to play the original Intellivision games on there. And I can't wait for Night Stalker, because that one actually looks like an interesting update, new version of it. There was a couple things that I was kind of optimistic about. For all intents and purposes, I just looked at it like, oh, this is going to be another Ouya, but with motion controls. So maybe we can get a bowling game out of it. Which, by the way, we never got a bowling game announced for it or anything. And all we got is just one series of lies after another. It's unfortunate. It really is unfortunate that, Keith Robinson really did everything that he could to keep that brand alive and to make sure that, you know, future generations could have access to these games, because a lot of these games are fun. And a lot of these games, like, you can show to kids, right? Like, I remember even when I was still younger, but, you know, like my younger cousins and my nephews would pick up the Intellivision and be like, these games are fun. Even at a time when, you know, the third, fourth, and fifth generation consoles were already out and, you know, popular, they still look back on the, even today, like when my nephews come and visit, and they find out when the last time they came to visit, or the first time they came to visit rather, first time they came to visit me, and I had an Intellivision flashback, the ultimate one, they were like, oh my god, this is the most amazing, you actually have this, and all the games are on it, oh, that's amazing. It's, you know, they spent a lot of time playing it, even though I had a Switch at the time. They wanted to play that. They don't want to play any of the games that I had on my computer. They wanted to play the Intellivision. So, I mean, Keith did a really good job in preserving, like, the history and the fun of the Intellivision, and making sure that, you know, that it stayed in the proper context. And sure, he wasn't very successful in trying to getting the games modernized. You know, but he did a really good job at that. Like, that was one of the things he was really good at, and he was a very interesting person, and he's the kind of person that you could listen to talk about the Intellivision, you know, for hours. And I did. It was a great podcast, which I think still find it amazing that there's a podcast, you know, that's like 6 hours long per episode, where they talk about the Intellivision. And it was monthly for a while, but it seems as though, like, they're really having a hard time organizing further shows and stuff. But it looks like they're getting it done a lot better as of recently. Called the Intellivisionaries. And he used to be on a lot of those kind of episodes, and I used to just binge listen to that stuff, because I didn't come in listening to it until a couple of years later, so I had, like, lots of stuff to go through. I listened to every episode. But yeah, but listening to him talk about it was always kind of fascinating to me. And, you know, he really had a passion for it. And it's just sad now that he's passed away to see, like, the company that he spent so much time and all the effort that he did to make sure that the Intellivision, you know, always had a very kind of favorable memory in most people's heads, even if they didn't even grow up with it. Just kind of be squandered away over this kind of bad, good intention, at least initially, but badly focused project to create a new console that has, as far as I've seen, like, no real clearly thought out direction, and it just turned into a giant just pull for money. But that's kind of where I stand on the Intellivision, and I'm probably not going to make any Intellivision content for a while, because I'm probably not until we hear either that they've come out with the console or they've filed for bankruptcy, or both, until I do something new, or unless something really bad happens, or some very notable thing. But I think the unboxing thing was hardly really on its own something to really do a full video on. So I thought I'd kind of summarize everything up at once, because we've already kind of delved into the whole history of it on my podcast, which is also available on this channel. But until then, whatever. I do want to kind of at some point go through and talk about the Duke controller. I think that's probably what I'm going to do with my next video, is just kind of show off the Duke, talk about the history of the Duke, and the modern iterations of them, and all that stuff, and my history with them. I think that's going to be kind of an interesting topic, because, you know, unlike the television controller, which everyone hates, the Duke everyone hates, but actually I think is fucking brilliant. But that's only because I have fucking giant fucking, you know, man paws. But anyways, I'm gonna wrap this up here. So go ahead, if you like this, go ahead, subscribe, leave and I'm not saying to leave a comment. I mean, sure, it helps. I'm not saying to leave a comment because I want to boost in the algorithm and anything, because I'm kind of beyond that at this point. I really don't care. But I really want to kind of know what your opinions are, and maybe your history of it as well. Even if you're like very pro Amico, and you really want to see this thing come out, I really want to know what your thoughts are, and your history of it, specifically with the original Intellivision, because my guess is that the vast majority of people who are really rooting for this thing to come out is just misplaced nostalgia. Because that's where it was for me, and I think that's where it is for a lot of other people. And I know, like Smash, he said that he was much more of an Atari kid, and I've seen a couple of other people talk about how they were more like Atari people, and that the television was always kind of like, oh, that was the system that had cooler looking games, but the one that I had was that, so they don't really have too much of nostalgia for that system. But it's definitely a nostalgia for second generation video games and video game consoles. That's kind of where I see it as, even though I've already talked about it. I'm not going to say it again. I'm not going to repeat myself. But anyways, I really kind of want to know. And if you've been a hater from day one, I definitely want to know like your kind of history with the Intellivision as well, because I'm just genuinely curious on where everybody is on that, because that's not really something that a lot of people are talking about, in terms of this kind of whole fiasco. But I've been going on for about over 45 minutes, so I'm gonna wrap this up here, and I'm gonna go stop being fat. I'm at the gym right now. Pet worms.